Joining the show right now, however, someone who contributed to this book, 100 Questions and Answers about Anorexia Nervosa, is Lynn Bjorklund. Welcome to the Dr. Casey Show, Lynn. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story, both in the book and here on the show. So you were a distance runner, correct?
That's right.
All right. And so when did this issue of restricting your food intake or just being concerned about weight loss and overtraining become a part of your life?
It was about the time I was in junior high, and I had a lot of self-confidence issues and, low self-esteem, and I really enjoyed running, and I found that by being a really good runner, that kind of helped, kind of in an external way, get some self-esteem. And then for me, it was like, well, I could be a really good runner, and maybe people would like me if I was a good runner. And to be a good runner, I thought you needed to be as light as possible. That's kind of like the literature and ideas that were pretty prevalent in running magazines at the time. So I started restricting, and for a while it seemed to work. Mm-hmm. And plus I had I was a good runner. Plus I was really thin, which with anorexia there's kind of like besides perfectionistic, low self-esteem, there's the feeling of kind of wanting control,
right?
And so doing well in running and being really thin, was kind of a combination that to try to feel better about yourself,
right?
And so there, it kind of can get a little bit of out of control, and you kind of just fall into the disease that way.
Yeah. So from what you're saying, Lynn, you were deriving some self-esteem out of being involved in running, starting in junior high. And from the messages you were getting, you thought in order to become better at your sport and to have your self-esteem go up, you needed to be thinner and leaner so that you would do better. And so you started to do the activities necessary to get that done. Your performance went up for a period of time. But when did the crash and burn hit?
Well, it's kind of a lot of times the resiliency of youth can get you through a lot, mm-hmm. But then I'd keep getting injured. I kind of wanted to run just a little bit more than I wanted to be really thin, so that might have kept me from, really getting into deadly anorexia. Mm. But I'd keep getting injured, fall apart. If you're trying to be a real elite athlete, you kind of balance on the edge, and of training really hard, and with anorexia and trying to do your sport, you go over that edge, mm-hmm. and it becomes almost more of a life and death sort of thing rather than just fun. Your sport becomes part of the disease,
right?
And you're trying to you're trying too hard, and you push yourself. There's no room for I can't be injured. I can't be tired. I've got to get this training in.
Right, that kind of extreme self-talk that just sort of forces you and allows you to push on. Dr. Shepphird, is this something that's common where because of people's youth when this starts, their bodies are able to allow them to continue and they might have some warning signs that they're just not attending to?
Sure, and amenorrhea can be one of those things that people overlook because if a woman is thin when she is in puberty, when she's just supposed to be getting her period, people just think, oh, well, it's normal. There's a range of time when women can start their period, and if you're thinner and you're smaller, you're more likely to get it later in life. But again, we are expecting women to get their period around a particular age, and that range of time is more narrow sometimes than athletes and even parents can think. So that can be an indicator, as we talked about earlier, that there's something going on. But anorexia actually is the most common in youth around the time of puberty. That's when the highest percentage of people come down,
Right.
or excuse me, not come down with, but develop anorexia.
Right.
And so yeah, that we know that while that is the highest population in terms of risk level, you make a really good point with your question.
Yeah, and I think it's actually, and Lynn, I think you could speak to this as well. It's really kind of mean because, you know, women, when we hit puberty, we round out, and boys, when they hit puberty, they stretch out and get leaner. And so that societal standard or athletic standard, boys get closer to and girls start to get further away from. And you as you pointed out, self-esteem was a large component of getting involved in sports. So it's just not fair.
Right, yeah.
Now, when did you get help around this issue?
Back then it was like in the 70s there was not much known about anorexia and eating disorders, and it just wasn't recognized. So I dealt with eating disorders for about 12 years before I started getting some counseling and kind of piece things together, and there's just so much better help out nowadays that people should go for it. There's good help that you can get out of this rather than having to suffer for such a long time, and that can have such long-term impacts on the quality of your life.
And I want to applaud you for coming out and speaking about this issue, because it sounds like, from as much as you shared in the book, it prevented you from continuing on in your sport.
It did. I was sort of a flash in the pan athlete. Did really well, and then crashed with injuries, and then the eating disorder, was so severe that I just couldn't go on, and but I learned so much in recovery. You get the joy of your sport back. It doesn't become a life and death thing anymore. You need to have that balance again, where what can I do today to burn calories and do better. It's like how's my body feeling? If I need to take a rest, I can have the balance to concentrate on, what can I do with with the relationships, be a better friend, contribute to the world, rather than so self-focused, so life and death on your sport.
And Dr. Casey, Lynn makes a really good point, because a lot of athletes sometimes fear getting help because they think they're going to have to give up their sport. But Lynn is an example of the fact that that isn't true. You can still be involved in your sport. It's just a matter of doing your sport in a healthy manner. And I'm really glad to hear that Lynn encouraged people, even from her own experience, to get treatment, because unfortunately, only about 10 to 30% of people with eating disorders even seek treatment.
Right.
And so there are millions of people, literally, out there who, for whatever reason, whether they're too ashamed, too embarrassed, perhaps afraid, maybe not sure what treatment is going to involve, maybe even afraid of having to give up their sport, so they don't seek treatment. But it's important to hear from Lynn's example that you can get better and still be involved in sport.
Well, and as Lynn shared in the book, I'm just going to read a short segment here. Lynn even pointed out in her experience, these may not be life-threatening, discussing the types of injuries and health consequences early on with the disordered eating, but these may not be life-threatening or seem severe enough to require a treatment program, but they can decrease quality of life. It is so important and so worthwhile to address these issues early on, when they are easier to treat and the long-term consequences can be lessened. Lynn, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story. If you a take-home message, if you will, for high school athletes, people who are younger, what would you like for them to really take home so that they can maybe reach out if they need to, or take a look at the types of things that they're doing in the name of sport?
I would say just to really enjoy your sport, and if you're looking to do really well, just kind of keep a balance and say, okay, why is this really important to me? It's fun to excel and do well, but make sure that it's not a reason that you're like a self-esteem issue. that you have to do this to feel good about yourself, that you're balanced.